I'm also interested in the arts and culture, of which on the west side of Chula Vista is almost non-existent. And I was on the board of the Onstage Theater, and I discovered all these performing groups that were basically homeless. And I realized it's important for us to protect nonprofits and to create low-cost performance venues so that they have a chance to present their art. And I think this contributes to the mental health of the community, which is very important to me. As far as, you know, Chula Vista in the 4th district, if you go down 2 of the main roads, there's 3rd Avenue. Go south, you will notice that half the businesses are out of business. And then if you go over to Broadway, you'll see something very similar. And I think this needs to be addressed. I think, you know, businesses as well as nonprofits need some sort of protection against extreme rent hikes and that kind of thing. So basically, I want to make Chula Vista a much better place. It's incredibly well situated between Tijuana and San Diego. It's beautiful. It's on the bay. It reaches out to Otay Lakes, and there's no reason why it can't be the best city in the United States.
Thank you.
So,
All right, thank you. Okay, it looks like we have Dr. Brenda Miller on Zoom.
I'm a registered nurse with over 40 years of nursing. I hold my PhD in nursing. I'm Dr. Brenda Miller. I'm a candidate for Grossmont Healthcare District Board of Directors, Zone 3. And why am I running for the board as a current clinician, educator? The American Nursing Association says that nurse leaders must be at the table where healthcare decisions are made. RNs have a direct RNs have direct patient care. We provide high quality care at low cost. The district board should elect RNs. RNs should be at that table. Why? We work in the hospitals. We work in the community. We work with all disciplines in both settings closely, addressing the needs of the patients, the families, and the communities. We address primary, secondary, and tertiary care, health disparity needs. The district needs nurses to be there to make those decisions. Again, my name is Dr. Brenda Miller. I'm a registered nurse and a candidate for the Grossmont Healthcare Board of Directors. I'm looking forward to your support, your endorsement, your donations, your volunteers, and anything to help me get into that position. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leticia Monquilla, and I'm a resident of Chula Vista on the east side, Otay Ranch in particular. I wanted to share with you that I'm a candidate for Chula Vista City Council District 3. I want to share with you today that our County Board Supervisor Chair Nora Vargas has endorsed my candidacy, as well as former Assembly Member and City of Chula Vista Mayor Mary Salas, as well as Councilmember Jose Preciado. I do want to let you know that I've owned my home since 2010, and I was able to buy my home with the fruit and labor of working for the California School Employees Association. I was honored to work and represent classified employees for 17 years of my career. I now work for UC Berkeley, and I've been working for UC Berkeley for the last 15 months. And I decided to run in my community to make sure that we have a constant and consistent voice on the city council. For those of you who have attended or may not be familiar, there has been a lot of folks that have been attending different meetings that are impacting governance at different levels of government, whether it's at the county, at the school boards, or at city council. And I have been an active member of the city, seeing the city council meetings and the level of attacks that our council members are taking on a regular basis. So know that I've taken a serious commitment in making sure that our democratic values are not only lived, but spoken up where we need to step in. I've been a Democrat since I was able to register to vote when I turned 18. And I want you to know that I will continue to stay my commitment to the Democratic values and continue to work to ensure we have a voice on that city council. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Again, Leticia Munguia, vote leticiamunguia.com is my website, and would love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, back to Zoom. We've got Joe Roca.
Hi there, folks. My name is Carter Dix. I'm the campaign manager for Joseph Rocha for Assembly District 76. Sorry, Joseph couldn't be here today. He is working, but I wanted to thank you all for making the space and time for us to discuss our campaign. Just a quick couple top lines. If you haven't met Joseph yet, Joseph is a Marine Corps veteran and a Marine Corps prosecutor. Just served his last 7 years in the Marines as a federal prosecutor. And got out and ran for state senate last cycle. Joseph is a proudly out LGBTQ candidate endorsed by Equality California, LGBTQ Victory Fund. We're a campaign built by labor and workers, nurses, school workers. We are endorsed by SEIU California, CSEA, and hopefully we have some more exciting labor updates to share with you in the weeks to come. Joseph is incredibly excited to be running again and to serve the folks in Assembly District 76. So if you ever have any questions for the campaign or for me or Joseph, I'm happy to reach out, happy to take a call or an email. I will drop my information into the chat and hopefully it can get to you folks out there. But very excited to live and work and represent Escondido here in North County. Thanks so much, folks.
All right, thank you. Well, any other candidates?
Hello, my name is Ellis Rose. Some of you know me, some of you may not. I have been an advocate on the issue of homelessness. I am formerly homeless. One of the things that I've learned from my American history is that almost no one in this country, as groups, seem to move forward unless they get a seat at the table. Okay, look at every ethnic group. They need to demand a seat at the table if they want to be respected and their needs met. Look at women, look at organized labor. Business, of course, I've always known that. And so I am going to be a candidate for District 3 City Council, district that is most heavily impacted by homelessness here in San Diego. And push has come to shove. I'm tired of suffering for it. I was listening to the night first segment from America's Got Talent. And I remember she said, you can't wait for everything to be, for life to not be hard before you decide to be happy. And I decided I can't wait for life to not be hard before I do something for more effective representation for homeless San Diegans. We aren't the homeless. We are homeless San Diegans. We are part of this community. And I'm sorry, it's time that we start being treated like that. So I'm asking for you, even though I know the Democratic Party has already done endorsements prematurely, and I think done wisely. I realize that I'm coming in, I'm just simply telling you what's going on, but I am going to be a candidate for City Council District 3.
Do we have any more on Zoom? Please raise your hand if you're a candidate and you'd like to speak. If you are a candidate and you would like to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand. Any more in the room? All righty, then we are going to move on to elected officials and their representatives. I see Doug. Come on up, Doug.
Last month I talked about the pro tem's bills as well as the state budget. All of our bills have passed their policy committee, and I'm not going to repeat it this month, but I'll come back next month after the legislature is concluded and let you know what passed. Hopefully they will all pass. The legislature will conclude this year on September the 14th. I also talked last time about the state budget, but what I didn't talk about though was the local budget wins. And part of the benefit of having a pro tem from San Diego is that she can use her influence to help bring money to San Diego. And in fact, the mayor had a press conference this past Friday to highlight some of the budget wins. There were, in the city of San Diego, there was over $25 billion. And that includes $5.6 billion for the Fleet Science Center for the new exhibit space, $500,000 for the Speckles Organ Project, $1.4 million for improvements to the San Diego Natural History Museum, $1.5 million for the BID Council with community programming such as street fairs and farmers markets, $2 million in funding for the San Diego Housing Commission's Costa Colina project. And then in addition to that, there was a total of $60 million for the San Diego region. So in addition to the ones I just mentioned, there was $2.7 million to the San Dieguito River Park Joint Powers Authority for the Reach the Beach Trail and Western Gateway project and the Costa Trail project. $5 million to the Scripps Institute of Technology for 2 programs. One is for the coastal monitoring, and the other is for coastal ocean pollution pathogen predictions modeling for the Tijuana River estuary, which is really important with regard to pollution in the local beaches there. And finally, $1 million for the San Diego's new Wildlife Alliance for California's Wildlife Health and Zoonotic Disease Program. So thank you.
I thank you, Doug, as always. All right, if you are an elected official or you have a representative or you are a representative of elected official, please raise your hand if you're on Zoom. And if you're in the room. All right, it looks like we have Dr. Tiffany Boyd Hodgson.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you on Zoom. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. As you all know, I am the Vice President of the Vallecitos Water District, and we have just moved through our budget season. We have passed a lot of resolutions and approved many new infrastructure projects, which I'm proud to support. I also want to let you all know that it came to light in the last meeting that I was the only woman, or the only member, rather, of the board of directors that did not have access to the building. And what I mean by that is there are places where we meet behind security, behind secured doors, and apparently everyone else had a key to get there, and I did not. So I have called that out. But this is the kind of things that women elected officials deal with. I am the only woman on the board. I'm not the only Democrat. I am the only woman. And everyone else seemed to be able to access the building without requiring an escort or having to ask to be let in. And that's a violation of dignity on my, from my perspective. So this is the kind of thing that women elected officials face, but I don't want that to discourage you from running. We need you in office. There are many, many positions open in San Diego and North County. I encourage you to go to the San Diego County Democrat website so you can see what positions are open. We have several in North County. I'm happy to connect with you more about serving on a water district. There are also city council seats open. There are hospital boards. There are school boards. There are college boards open. Please run. We need you so that we can stop this BS. Thank you.
I would like to introduce to you our moderator and turn it over to the esteemed Samantha Jenkins. We're lucky to have her with us tonight, and she's going to moderate the panel. Samantha?
Well, I'd like to call upon all of our panelists forward. So come forward, please take a seat. And while they're doing that, I will introduce myself, talk a little bit about what we're doing this evening. So first and foremost, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the San Diego Democratic Women's Club inaugural panel discussion on emergent social issues impacting our community. And to let you know, tonight's topic is going to focus on the region's response to local and national homelessness crisis. This evening, we'll be discussing the City Council's recent passage of the unsafe camping ordinance and its impact on our unhoused neighbors, as well as additional existing policies and practices related to homelessness services in our region. And so, as she said, my name is Samantha Jenkins. I'll be your moderator, and I'd like to introduce you to our panel this evening. This evening, we have Stephen Whitburn, who is our City Council representative for District 3. We have Coleen Cusack, an attorney and housing rights advocate and candidate for City Council District 3. We have Greg, I was told Angel is the correct pronunciation, CEO of Interfaith Services. Mr. Kwofi Breed, who is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. And Mr. Ellis Rose, who has just announced to us this evening that he is going to be a candidate for City Council District 3 and also is an advocate at Conscious San Diego and a board member of the San Diego Regional Task Force on Homelessness. All right, so this evening, everyone, what we're going to do is we're going to have kind of two groups of questions for our panel. Some are going to be a little more directed or targeted to folks who are in the political space, who are either holding an elected seat or looking to be a candidate, and give them opportunities to speak to the issues. And then we're going to have questions for folks who are more in the industry professional space. And I know we have folks on the panel who are going to overlap in both of those spaces, and they are welcome to respond to whatever questions they have an interest in. I have been told that each response will have 2 minutes, and you'll see the time projected back there on the clock. So we will have a timekeeper who is moderating that for us. All right, sorry, that was someone online joining us. But we're going to move forward because we don't have a lot of time to work with. So our first question this evening is going to speak to the recently passed unsafe camping ordinance. We know that this ordinance passed with a very slim approval of 5-4 at the City Council, and it also had significant community dissent. I would like our folks in the political realm to answer how they have voted regarding the ordinance, and would they have changed any component of the ordinance's language? And we can start with Coleen.
I would have voted no, and it's the reason I'm running for office. I have been fighting against unconstitutional ordinances that the city has been using unfairly against the homeless population. I've been doing that since 2014. This is just one more in a long line of unconstitutional acts that my clients have to defend against. I represent homeless individuals pro bono. I'm a criminal defense attorney. There's no money for me at the end of the rainbow. So I'm doing this in order to get these laws declared unconstitutional, in order so that these unconstitutional acts can't be used. These acts are punishment by police. There is no connection between what the police are doing and a prosecutable case. 100% of the arrests under the encroachment ordinance were dismissed because the prosecutor was unable to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Because prosecution isn't the purpose in these ordinances. Punishment by police is. You see, it's all an illusion. It's not really ending homelessness, it's hiding homelessness. It's convincing you when you see someone on the street that that's not a homeless person. How do they do that? They take away people's property. So police are approaching people and saying, do you want a shelter bed? When they make this request, they have absolutely no idea if a shelter bed is available. Shelter beds are only generally available between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. We have a 97% vacancy rate. I'm sorry, 97% full. So there's only about 55 beds in play for about 3 hours. And we're paying police $24 million a year, $24,469,812 a year. We're paying 73.15 police officers to fill those shelter beds from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Now,
That's Ms. Cusack, that's your time.
I'll finish.
All right, at this time, we will allow Councilmember Whitburn to speak to the question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I understand the question, so I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much, Samantha, for moderating this forum tonight. Kathy, thank you for getting us all together and hosting this at the Democratic Women's Club. Really appreciate everybody who is here to participate in the forum, both in person and also online. I am the city council member who brought forward the ordinance, working on the details of it with Mayor Gloria. And we brought it forward in June, and it passed, as you mentioned, by a 5-4 vote, and then a 5-4 vote again on the second reading. For those who may not know, I represent District 3 on the City Council, which includes downtown. It includes Little Italy, Bishop Hills, Bankers Hill, University Heights, Hillcrest, North Park, South Park, and Golden Hill. It's the urban core of the city, the neighborhoods around Balboa Park, and it's the area that has been profoundly impacted by homelessness. There are a large number of people not only experiencing homelessness, but also experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And I have been really struck by how unsafe and unhealthy the encampments are and have been. Hundreds of people have died in the past year who live in encampments. Now, I'm not talking about hundreds of people over the last decade or the last hundreds of people in the past year who live in encampments have died. Many of them preyed upon by drug dealers, and they've overdosed oftentimes with fentanyl. In 2017, we saw people die from a hepatitis outbreak. More recently, a number of people were sickened by Shigella. We've had people hit by cars. We've had people attacked. The status quo is simply unacceptable. We need to do everything that we can to keep people from dying on the streets. And this ordinance designed to get people out of encampments into a safe place so that we can save people's lives.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitburn. We'll pass the mic to Mr. Ellis Rose now.
If that ordinance had come up before me, I would have voted no. It is wrong, it is ignorant, and quite frankly, it is evil. Coleen Cusack was correct when she said that the encroachment ordinance really wasn't about trying to accomplish addressing the issue of encroachment. That really was an excuse to harass homeless San Diegans. Let me explain to you that I'm housed now, okay? I'm in permanent supportive housing. My neighbor that was 2 doors down from me, man who was going through amputations due to infection in his toes and his foot, was in his wheelchair. This was back in 2017, during what a few of us, I think I see Lori out her head, yes, we were told it was called the roll, where the San Diego police officers were expected to harass anyone who looked like they were homeless in the East Village 24 hours a day, every shift. That's why it was called the roll, just keep it rolling. And my neighbor got ticketed for encroachment for sitting in his wheelchair on the sidewalk. Was he blocking traffic? Not at all. That cop said that if he didn't move and the cop came back around the block, he was going to ticket him. And he did. Got thrown out in court. Judge wouldn't even listen to it. So I'm telling you, this is wrong. I will tell you that when we talk about all these health instances, nobody talks about the jail being a major factor for hepatitis A. No one talks about the fact, I was just talking with Yvonne Elkins before the meeting. I was supposed to meet with her and I had to beg off of it. Why? Because I was cramping so badly that I had Shigella. I don't eat my food on the street. I didn't get it from somebody on the street. I got it through my food distribution. Does anybody talk about that? No. Stop blaming the homeless community of San Diego for what they have not caused.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rose. Okay, this question is going to be targeted a little more to folks who are industry professionals. And as I said earlier, there's a number of you for whom there's overlap in your presence on the panel tonight. So the question is, there's a quote recently by RTFH Chair Ray Ellis stating that what you're seeing is a system that is stressed and overloaded. And another recent quote by Tamala Kohler, also of RTFH, saying, while there are some bright spots, more clearly, something needs to be done if we want to see different results. They were obviously speaking about the city's response and practices and policies related to addressing homelessness through our service providers. I'm wondering what you all as industry professionals would do to change what we're currently doing as it relates to mitigating homelessness in San Diego. I'd like to start today with Mr. Kwofi Reed.
So tackling homelessness in 2 minutes. I think that we as a region have to fundamentally sort of reset our expectations. I think the first thing that we have to reset our expectations and frankly our understanding about is what is the problem that we are looking at. I think that the service providers in and around homelessness do tremendous work, and I think that their work is desperately needed, but it is an acute response to an acute issue. When we are looking at homelessness on the street, what we are essentially looking at is a failure of our housing market. We in California, in Southern California, through a range of reasons, many of them good, many of them problematic, have not built enough housing. And the reason why we have people who are homeless is because the limited supply of housing we have is too expensive to absorb the kinds of people who fall out of a functioning housing market or system. We do not have more people who are drug addicted. We do not have more people who are developmentally challenged than any other community proportionately. The reason why we have more homeless people is because those are the kinds of people who fall out of a housing market when it becomes too expensive. We have not built enough housing, so we have to do that. If you sit on a community planning board, if you're part of one of these conversations, and you've protested the building of any kind of housing, at the top of the market, in the middle of the market, at the bottom of the market of supportive housing, you've unfortunately been part of this conversation, whether you knew it or not. We have not built enough, and so that's what we have to do. Those expectations around how quickly this problem is going to get solved, or whether or not those acute solutions are going to be able to solve it, is misguided. San Francisco spends a tremendous amount of money on homeless services and can't fix it. The reason they can't fix it is because the housing is too expensive. Savannah, Georgia doesn't have the same homeless problem that we have. It's not because they don't have our same issues.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. All right, if we could pass the mic to Mr. Angel, please. You need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And Greg is fine. So one of the statistics that the regional task force, which was quoted, has identified and brought forward that's gotten a lot of traction is the sad reality that for every 10 people who have overcome homelessness in our community in the last year or month or any time frame, for every 10 who overcome homelessness, 13 people fall into it. And so I would echo my colleague's remarks that it's driven by expensive housing that people cannot afford. It's also driven by an exceptionally tight rental market where individuals who have the means to otherwise afford rent are not selected for a limited supply. And so it means that when individuals do fall into homelessness, they have a harder time than those of us who are housed have to actually get approved for housing. That data is more and more empirically accepted and proven to be the causing factors of unsheltered homelessness. High cost of housing, tight rental market. It's an exceptional book on this called Homelessness is a Housing Problem, released this last year by Greg Colborn, a real estate and investment professor at the University of Washington. So what can we actually do about this? Absolutely, we need to approve more housing of all types. We especially need housing at the lower end of the market, including deed restricted affordable housing, but housing of all types. We also need to look at policies that can make rental more accessible for individuals. We at my organization worked with a mother, single mom earning more than $90,000 a year, who was unable to find an apartment because she was $150 a month short of the 4 times the rental requirement that was placed for her and her great-granddaughter. This is one example.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this question?
Stephen Whitburn again. I would say I can't agree more. The solution to the homelessness crisis in many respects is the addition of more housing and in particular affordable housing units. And you have a city council in San Diego that is very committed to building more housing and in particular income restricted affordable housing. I serve on the city's land use and housing committee together with Councilmember Joe LaCava, who had a distinguished career professionally in this area and also serves on the land use and housing committee now, where he's been a leader in this space. Vivian Moreno and Kent Lee also serve on that committee. This council has approved every housing project that has come before us, and I voted for every housing project that has come before us, and we're seeing more and more getting built. Just last week, we opened The Helm, which is a 77-unit affordable housing project with 30% to 80% area median income affordability, meaning that somebody, it's targeted people who can afford an apartment there if they have only 30 to 80% of the area median income. We began construction on the Cortez Hill apartments, and that is an 88-unit income restricted affordable complex. Harrington Heights, there was a story in the paper. That is going to be starting this fall. They'll be building 273 affordable units there. Last year, Father's Joe's opened up 407 affordable units. And we're looking at the Civic Center Plaza, the old Central Library, the Navigation Center, as areas where we intend to build more affordable housing. I think it's key, and I think that you're going to see more and more.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Rose would like to respond.
I think my eyes on this topic were opened with the Civic Gardens development that was where the owner had finally met the end of their deed restriction and decided to eliminate development that was, I think, 600 plus low-income units, and wanted to replace it with units that would appeal to moderate and high income, because he wanted to pass something on to his grandkids. And the thing that I began to realize when I was watching this process is that the entire process at the city is a very fractured process. You have the Housing Commission, you have the Planning Commission, you have the City Council as the City Housing Authority, and no one has to take responsibility for the mistakes, because everybody can point a finger at somebody else, unless it's really good, and then everybody can take credit for it. And you know what? I'm tired of it. And I see these things happen all the time and break down. It's not just having affordable housing. It is not. In Chicago, they're going to put people out on the street to, in the rapid rehousing program. We've given them assistance, and that should be enough, right? No, it's not enough. I know Chicago, I live there. One of the most segregated cities in the world, or in the country, excuse me. And they're going to put these people back out into a system that has already chewed them up and spit them out, and think the system is going to act differently. Have to do something about the system. We have alternatives that we can approach and use aggressively, but we don't. I could go into length on that, but I don't think I have the time. Point is, no, it's not just simply about affordable housing. It's about the whole system. We have been making mistakes for decades now, and each mistake is going to have to be undone.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Cusack would like to respond. Ms. Cusack, it's been a moment. Would you like me to repeat the question, or are you pretty clear on what it is?
Okay, thanks. What are we going to do? We all here at this table agree that the cause of homelessness is too unavailable housing, and rents are too expensive. But the rhetoric that comes out of the politicians is that everybody who's homeless is a mentally ill drug addict, and everybody's afraid of them. And so if there's any pockets of people, we're going to assume all of them are mentally ill drug addicts and criminalize them. We have study after study after study. In fact, every study that's looked at this has said that criminalization entrenches homelessness and makes it worse. So it's not just about getting more housing, it's about ending homelessness. We pay social workers to help people get into housing and to help connect them to services. And then we pay police 4 times how much we're paying social workers to run into their workplace and mess everything up and send everyone into wherever. It is cruel what we're doing. The people that Greg mentioned, these are people that are now being chased by police because of Councilmember Whitburn and the ordinance. This is unfair. These individuals can't get themselves out of homelessness. Now, there was a lot of, we're talking about hundreds of thousands. We need thousands. We have 6,500 homeless people in San Diego at a minimum. So we're not doing anything to scale. And people are waiting 10 years for housing to become available. So how are we going to respect their dignity in those 10 years? There are people who commit suicide because of the stigma of homelessness. This has to end. We have to treat these individuals who are waiting for housing to become available with dignity.
Thank you. All right, our next question is this. According to a recent NBC7 report, 80% of persons experiencing homelessness in San Diego became homeless here. That is a reflection of our cost of living and the proportionate availability of housing. What would you do to address cost of living and available housing stock? And I know we've touched on this a little bit in response to other questions, but if anyone has anything they'd like to expand on. We can start with Councilmember Whitburn.
Well, there's a couple of different approaches. I mean, the first thing that I think we want to expand are our efforts to prevent homelessness in the first place. And there have been studies that have shown that some people have fallen into homelessness for lack of a $300 gap in their ability to afford the rent. Particularly when you look at folks, seniors, many times who are on fixed incomes, if the rent increases, they can't come up with the additional funds. So the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego both started pilot programs to provide subsidies to some folks, fairly small groups to start with, but some folks who need that additional funding to remain in their apartments. And I'd like to see those shallow subsidy programs expanded, because I think that they're successful, and I think certainly it's more cost effective to help somebody stay in their home than it is to try to get them back into housing after they've fallen into homelessness. So prevention is one important thing that we need to ramp up. Also, we need to look for kinds of housing that are more affordable to build and more affordable for people who rent. So for instance, we used to have far more SROs, single room occupancy buildings downtown and in other areas than we do today. Many of them were torn down and made way for some of the luxury housing that we have now. We need to build as many more SRO units as we can downtown, other parts of the city, so that we can provide a less expensive alternative for folks. So those are just a couple of ways, but I think we really need to focus on those two things in particular.
Thank you. Mr. Rose, did you want to respond as well?
Please. Part of the answer to the solution is to stop creating homelessness. I need to say that we keep focusing on issues like housing stock and so on, and that is important. But the way to do this is not to replace bad housing stock with more bad housing stock. I'm sorry. Have any of you lived in an SRO? I suspect many of you have not. I have. It's not my preference. I'll live in a studio. I'll live in a 1-bedroom. Okay, but I want some decent housing. Just decent. I live in an apartment right now with serious black mold, but I'm being told it's my fault. The building opened in 2017, okay? That's not my fault. I have watched people who have been put out on the street and shouldn't have been put out. One of my good friends in my building was put out because supposedly he owed a year's worth of rent he didn't owe. But the mistakes were on the part of the building manager, the space managers, and the housing commission. And when the governor's order that had put the governor's moratorium on evictions back in 2021, once that was lifted at the beginning of July, there were 180 cases that were still in the pipelines in courts. 2/3 of those cases decided, the owners or the managers or whoever decided, let's just drop it. Smart, good public relations. He was one of the 60 cases that still went forward. He was evicted for something that he did not do. So let's start talking about the reality. It's more than housing stock. It's about services that need to perform and need to perform well and are not doing it. I'm going to be a critic on that for as long as I have to. The whole system is failing. And somebody needs to speak up and talk about those failures.
I host a podcast called Homeless in San Diego, and I've had the opportunity to have some pretty amazing guests on. Ellis has been on, Coleen has been on. Most often we feature individuals who share their stories overcoming homelessness, but sometimes we have subject matter experts. And a few years ago, we had Janie Roundtree on, who's a researcher out of Cal Policy at UCLA. And she has done some pretty remarkable research to identify the predictive factors that identify the likelihood of somebody becoming homeless. And the number one factor of predicting whether someone becomes homeless or not is not their race, age, gender, ethnicity. It's not their income. It's not their predilection for addiction. It's none of these things. It's simply the census tract they live in. More directly, it's the level of financial depravity that census tract. And so I don't have a good suggestion on how to address cost of living, but I do have, because we provide more than 75 different programs at Interfaith Community Services, and poverty is the through line on all of them. I do have some real clear suggestions on how to prevent people from falling into homelessness. And if we can't do a better job of preventing, we will never build our way out of this. It's not going to happen. So we have to do a better job of preventing. So if we can simply target the limited homeless prevention resources that we have in these particular low-income, underserved census tracts, we will see remarkably positive outcomes. There is data to show the efficacy of these interventions. And providers like ours have scant resources to prevent somebody from becoming homeless. We have programs where literally we have to prove or try to figure out a way to identify how somebody is homeless in order to provide particular types of assistance that otherwise is not available to them. So increasing that prevention will have a remarkably positive impact.
Thank you. All right, this next question is a little more centered on our industry professionals. So I'm going to start with Mr. Reed on this one. And the question is, unhoused persons commonly reject housing because they believe that it would be overly restrictive and impinge upon their lifestyle. In response to this concern, I'm wondering if there's any room for shared governance at safe camping spots. And do you have any thoughts on how safe camping and intermittent housing could be made more amenable to our unsheltered neighbors?
I think I'm going to respectfully pass on the question and defer to the expertise of the other folks on the panel. I'm not an expert on sort of the decisions of unhoused persons as they're relating to thinking about camping. So rather than answer the question, I'm going to turn my time over to somebody who might be able to answer it a bit more thoroughly than I am.
Could you ask the question again?
All right, unhoused persons commonly reject housing because they believe that it will be overly restrictive and its impact on their lifestyle. And in response to this, I'm wondering if you believe that there's any room for shared governance in the safe camping sites and other temporary housing options.
What you said, I'd like to
I
correct.
think you're talking about shelter.
I'd like to correct your question. because my clients don't reject housing. No, they're not rejecting housing, they're rejecting shelter. And there's a big difference between shelter and housing. So housing, a shelter in San Diego is unsafe. It's the one that half dozen of another between staying on the street. More people are housed directly from the street than are housed from shelter. More people return to the street than are placed into housing from people who are in shelters. Shelters are paid a premium for the number of different people that are in them during the month, 30 days. So they have an incentive to kick people out so they can get new people in and to get more money for that month. People aren't turning away housing, period. People are making very decisions on their own behalf because these are adults. We've infantilized homeless people and we've not given them the autonomy to make decisions for themselves. No homeless person knows whether or not a shelter is available in any given minute, day, or week. They have to get in touch with a caseworker. If they've got a great caseworker, they got a better shot. If they've got a dud, maybe not. And those caseworkers have to fight over 55 beds during a 3-hour slot if they want to get into a shelter. So why are we complaining that people don't want to be in shelters? We only have 25% of the shelters for the homeless people we need. So let individuals choose for themselves. The rules prohibit people from leaving before 5 a.m. If they have a job, then during third shift, they can't accept shelter. And then they're labeled as service resistant and not liking rules.
Thank you. Mr. Angel.
Yeah, we provide different types of housing programs and shelters in North County. Our shelters are really horrifically funded. There's no funding. We had the shelters in the city of San Diego receive $60 to $70 per bed night. Our North County shelters that are other organizations of ours provide get about $8 a night. So it doesn't provide the level of service that's necessary, which speaks to what the reality that you were describing, Colleen, that we're not able to provide the level of support that people need. We also operate a post-hospitalization recuperative care center in partnership with healthcare, and we're about to move almost everybody out of one of our shelters into that program because they're so sick. They actually are a better fit for a post-hospitalization recuperative care program than they are our shelter. 80% of our current shelter residents, we believe, are going to qualify for this newly expanded recuperative care center. The individuals in our shelter are more medically fragile than the residents you will encounter at an inpatient hospital. And so when somebody says they don't want shelter, it might be because they were kicked out of the last shelter because they were incontinent. It might be because they experienced all sorts of things at that last shelter that robbed them of their humanity, that made them feel not safe. So we need to operate shelters that are dignified, that present as few barriers as possible, that center absolutely governance and empowerment of the individual first and foremost, and the needs of providers doing this work second, third, fourth. So there's a lot of things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I'm not speaking about any of the shelters that Greg Angel is involved with. I just need to tell you that the first shelter that I was in, and this is my first exposure to black mold. I didn't know what black mold was. I'm sorry, I just didn't. And now the housing I grew up in the Midwest, it didn't have black mold, but I think it's because it also didn't have, prefab materials. It was older housing, and it was literally hanging from the ventilation ducts and ventilation shaft. It was hanging like Spanish moss, and I just thought it was dust. Okay, I didn't know until my bunkie told me what that was, and they had to clean it with a dye and a hazmat suit. The rest of us in that shelter, we weren't given any protection. We need to talk about the fact that shelters are not housing. Please make sure that whenever there's a discussion, don't ever consider shelters to be housing. Okay, they are not. I need to say that I was from the start really just horrified about the discussion about the accident that happened under the viaduct, the Avenue, I believe it's Avenue C underpass, where the car went up and hit some people that were camped up on the sidewalk. And I was horrified because immediately everybody started talking about the issue of shelters. No one talked about housing. No one. And furthermore, I need to say, why was it wrong for those people to be there? With all due respect, if those had been co-eds going to school at community college, would anybody have questioned why were they there? No, they would have been focusing on the driver who ran them over. Okay, let's start focusing where we should be focusing. And then I also need to say, by the way, that the term that I think you might want to be using instead of shared governance is inclusion. And I think Lori Saldana will testify to the fact that I have banged that drumbeat forever. Inclusion means that homeless San Diegans in San Diego would be part of creating, implementing, and evaluating programs, policies, and services. Okay, in the city of Boston, good example, the mayor required that every decision made regarding homelessness, and he went on to serve in the Biden administration. Go blank on his name, I'm sorry. But he required that every decision go through homeless Bostonians. And I had a woman at what's the conference? Sure. I just wanted to say real quickly that she told us that they actually changed the course of a decision that she thought was high tech. And what they did was they stopped the turf wars. Including homeless San Diegans in the decision-making process instead of shutting us out is the way to go.
I believe Councilmember Whitburn would like to respond.
Thank you, Samantha. There are certainly people who are living outdoors who accept an indoor shelter bed when it is made available to them. There are others who don't accept a shelter bed. And that's one of the reasons why the concept of safe sleeping bubbled up a couple of years ago. There was a discussion about taking the parking lot, screening it out for privacy, and having folks living on the sidewalks or in the parks move into a safe sleeping site instead. I went on a trip to Denver with the Downtown Partnership a couple of summers ago and asked the city officials there about their safe sleeping program, and they talked about how successful it was. And how it was embraced by the surrounding neighborhood when they saw the positive impacts of it. So I came back to San Diego and really made a real push to get safe sleeping in San Diego. During the point in time count, in fact, just this past winter, when I talked to individuals who were in the doorways of businesses on the sidewalks, I asked them if they would be interested in a shelter bed, and several of them said no. But when I asked them if they would be interested in a safe sleeping site if one were available, every single person I asked that question said yes. And so we opened our first safe sleeping site at City Maintenance Yard at 20th and B. That has 136 city supplied tents that can accommodate up to 2 people. We'll be opening another one that will accommodate up to 400 tents this fall. And the response has been incredibly positive. The one at 20th and B is nearly full. There have been media stories about individuals who have stayed there who say how much safer they feel, how much more stable they feel, and how they see it as an opportunity to really focus on what they need to do to get back on their feet. So we need more options for people, and safe sleeping is one of them.
Go ahead, Ms. Cusack.
The 136 beds that are available, or the tents that are available at the Safe Lot, are being doled out by police officers, PATH, and Downtown Partnership. Service providers can't get people in here. There's a waiting list of hundreds who want to be in those tents, but are prevented from being in those tents, so that they can hold tents open, so that police can threaten other people who don't want to be in those tents to go in those tents, and arrest them, take their property, cite them, make them move. So this isn't being used in the capacity that it should be. If it's supposed to be for the common good, then let everybody who wants to go there go until it fills up and then open up a new one. And don't force people in at the butt of a gun. Now, nobody should be in that safe camp right now because they were evacuated last night because they put everybody in a area known for flooding. So they moved everyone to Golden Hall. Golden Hall is being evacuated, is being emptied. It'll be completely empty by the end of the year. They moved everyone into Golden Hall, which has a number of code violations inside for the building. But it also has a COVID outbreak right now. So they took everybody in a safe camp and now exposed them to a COVID outbreak.
Thank you. I want to ask you a question in hopes that Mr. Reed will have a response for us. I'm going to make sure he's part of the conversation. All right. We know that some cities are using the construction of tiny homes as an option to address their homelessness crisis. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on bringing the tiny home model into San Diego and how you believe city government could partner with organizations such as yours to implement that.
All right, as the president and CEO of San Diego Habitat, we've taken a pretty close look at tiny homes. And while I think they have some benefits potentially for home builders such as myself, and even affordable home builders, I guess my top line response is that as a civic policy and as a region, they do not offer a significant solution or better solution than other housing options. The allure of a tiny home is the sort of concept that, oh, it's small, the house must be cheap to build, that'll be quick and easy, and we'll have a place where people can live. So this is a temporary fix. The reality is that the most valuable piece of any real estate that you build is not the improvement, it's not the house, it's the land that's underneath it. And that frankly, building a tiny house is a pretty inefficient use of a land, which is quite frankly our most precious resource when it comes to thinking about how many people we can house. My perspective on this panel is a little different from some of the other folks who are here. I'm sort of looking at it from the perspective of, as a housing system, how is it that we have arrived here, and how is it potentially that we could get our way out? I think, again, the acute issues that homeless people are suffering through, are real. They are things that require our attention, our care, and certainly our resources. But if we are going to solve this systemically, we have to address the fact that we have not built enough housing over the course of the past few decades. And so tiny houses, from my perspective, do not address that problem and are not really a substantive additive element to that conversation.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to respond? Mr. Rose?
And as somebody who was a former board member of Amicus Incorporated, Amicus actually focused on trying to provide tiny cabins, not tiny homes. And oftentimes there's a misconception. Tiny homes have full plumbing. They have, allow me to finish. They have plumbing. They have full-on electricity. Tiny cabins don't. Tiny cabins are meant to be a temporary shelter alternative. And so I think it's important that we realize that there's a difference between the two, and that tiny homes are not the same as tiny cabins. Tiny cabins can have their place, but right now, realistically, given the various issues of San Diego, I don't see it as an effective shelter alternative locally. But to be real honest, if it was more effective, if it could be effectively implemented locally, it's actually the best shelter alternative. People in tiny cabins have a higher success rate with successful permanent housing location than any other alternative, including shelters.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, our next. I think we've looked back to you once or twice already. I just want to move forward, but thank you for that. Next question, how closely does the city intend to work with the police department regarding enforcement? Particularly given that San Diego is already understaffed and running astronomical amounts of overtime hours for its existing force. What considerations have been made regarding budgetary concerns for enforcing this new ordinance? And if we could start with Councilmember Whitburn, please.
Sure, happy to. Obviously, the police department is a department of the city of San Diego. So the city works hand in hand with the police department on this. The police department right now is already very engaged with the unsheltered community. If you go on a ride along with a police officer, you will find that half, if not more, of the calls that our police department respond to, certainly in my district, are around concerns that in one way or another involve unsheltered individuals. So the police department is already very engaged with the unsheltered community in discussing the enforcement of the ordinance. The city does not feel that there is a need to add police officers to do this enforcement, nor to add additional funding to do it. We can do it with the police officers that we currently have. So that is what we are doing. We have been rolling out the ordinance gradually. We certainly started with a month of informing the unhoused community about the new ordinance, and have been gradually beginning the process of progressive enforcement as outlined in the ordinance.
Is there anyone else who'd like to respond?
Homelessness is a health issue. Housing is healthcare. Police have no business in this. We should be sending caseworkers and mental health care professionals and paying them overtime to address these issues. Police are trained to arrest and to transport people to jail. That's what they're good at. We should leave that to them. We have 73.15 police officers who are assigned to the neighborhood policing division, and all they do is respond to homelessness issues. That's it. They will never come to your house on a violent crime in progress call, ever. They've been taken out of that. They work day shift. If we were to disband this group, that's 73.15 officers who can respond to violent in progress calls. And not a single penny increase in the budget is necessary. Let social workers do social workers' job and let police do police job.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to respond to that? Okay. The National Homelessness Law Center stated in 2017's report that even the trend data are not necessarily accurate indicators of success or failure of programs or policies that address homelessness. What would you propose regarding changes to policy and practice that would create more accurate counts and more impact on homeless services? If we could start with Mr. Angel.
Probably impossible or very challenging to do this, but we do an annual point in time count every year. And as a community, we should all just agree to not care about that. Like, we have to do it, what requires us to do it, tracks every year, but it's not the data that is going to allow us to, that tracks success. It tracks how many people a whole bunch of volunteers can find on one morning, on one night, on one day out of the whole year. It is consistently inconsistent. We do, though, have a very consistent data set that is used every day by just about every provider in the region. It's called the Homeless Management Information System, and it includes the data that providers like Interfaith are required to enter for pretty much all government-funded programs. That database shows that about 40,000 people last year experienced homelessness in San Diego County. trying to actually end that homelessness by doing something really hard, asking a group like mine for help. That's strong data, it's right there. So we really need to, as a region, as leaders, look at that data as the way we're going to evaluate how many people are experiencing homelessness and how we're doing. The trend of for every 10 people who get housing, 13 fall into homelessness, that comes from that data set. It comes from that database. There's a lot of other really strong data elements we have there. One of the things that we're looking at, I mentioned the efficacy around prevention. Well, we could look at my organization say prevented homelessness for 100 households in one city, in the city of Escondido. And I'm just making that number up. We can then look the next year and say, well, those 100, how many fell back into homelessness somewhere? And then we can show, well, that was really effective. Or wow, it looks like this other group was way more effective than Interfaith Community Services. Why was that? We're not doing that analysis right now.
Is there anyone else who wanted to respond? Rose?
First of all, Rick, thank you very much. You know, and that I agree with you. We've been on the board of the regional task force together. And so on that point, we have really been in strong agreement about the count. I have begged that officials stop using the point in time count numbers to tell us how many people are homeless. It's inaccurate. How do we know that? Because the County Board of Education is required to compile an estimate of homeless families. And their numbers 3 times ours. Family Health Centers did an independent study 1 year where they asked everybody who was checking in, do you have an address or are you homeless? And they came up with a number that's 3 times. You know that Family Health Centers doesn't interview everybody in the county, right? The numbers are not representative in the point in time count, please. There is something that I would like to propose that should be the measure of whether or not we are succeeding with addressing homelessness. And that is once people are placed into housing, the measure of success is not that they were placed into housing. The measure of success is where are they at 3 years from then, 5 years from then? Are they still housed? And if they're not housed in the same fashion, why? What's that about? That may be good, it may be bad. But what's going on? Stop it. I've seen this happen too many times and I'm tired of the horror stories. I witnessed these firsthand. And it's hard for me, okay? It gets to me. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Because if I'm upset about it, why about the people who are going through it? It's got to stop. We need to stop turning people out of homelessness just to turn them back into it. We need to stop that.
All right, so our next question is, what strategies for collaboration are currently in place between the city of San Diego and other municipalities in the region who are likely to receive an influx of unhoused persons following the enforcement of the current ordinance? We can start with Councilmember Whitburn.
The city of San Diego works collaboratively with a number of different agencies. Certainly, the County of San Diego, the San Diego Housing Commission, which is essentially an agency of the city, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, and other folks. I think that the city of San Diego stands ready to have a county-wide, collaborative, cohesive approach to the homelessness crisis. And we stand ready to work with any and all municipalities interested in joining us in what we're doing to address homelessness. The city of San Diego, and in particular, my district, has far more shelters for individuals, and the only 2 safe sleeping sites in the county are in the city of San Diego and in District 3. We provide the lion's share of the services for people who are experiencing homelessness. So we would like to see other cities and municipalities in San Diego County step up and address the homelessness crisis within their own communities. And we are ready to partner with them so that we can take a region-wide approach, which is really what we do need to be doing.
Ms. Cusack?
So the mayor went on record calling out the mayors of the surrounding cities for chasing their homeless into San Diego. And then we passed an ordinance where we're chasing our homeless into their cities. There's a problem in Chula Vista right now because everyone's fled to get away from San Diego police, and they're in Chula Vista where there are inadequate shelters and services as well. So there's no collaboration going on. There's just a lot of finger pointing. And there needs to be, we need to take care of our own. As mentioned earlier, 80% of the homeless become homeless living in San Diego. It's both unethical and immoral and illegal to ship our homeless people to other cities. It's like kicking out your kids to the next door neighbor and making them raise them. So we need to take care of our own and ensure that other cities are also taking care of their
The other cities would welcome the opportunity to work with the city of San Diego. I predominantly work in the North County. There are 8 cities up there. None of them receive state funding that the city of San Diego receives. And so if the city is going to pass policies that will move people out, I would encourage the city to consider sharing some of the funding resources that are being provided. One of our shelters in North County, it's located in Vista. The #1 most common destination city that someone became homeless in, where they come into that city, is not Vista, it's Escondido. This happens to be a family shelter. There's no family shelters in Escondido right now. The second most common city of origin is San Diego. That shelter provider was told by the city of San Diego that they wouldn't be able to provide any funding because they weren't located in the city. A reasonable stipulation, right? Understandable, but doesn't match the reality that we're seeing. So I do think there is a significant need, to your point, Councilmember, for greater collaboration between our local governments, because this is a regional issue that is not being addressed equitably throughout the region.
All right, we have used up the majority of our time, but I think we wanted to maybe take a question or two from the floor. Is that correct, Kathy? Sure. All right, I'll take a question from Wendy.
What the city is doing is partners, they've allowed these vacation rentals that is now displacing my coworkers out of, the city has allowed all these vacation rentals. They're completely out of control, and my coworkers, where I work at Trader Joe's, are getting displaced out of their homes and having to drive, you know, an hour drive to go work a low-wage job. I think it's a really big problem. We've limited our housing. We've taken away that affordable housing that we have, and now we're building big buildings that have, I don't even know what's going to happen with these developments if they're going to stay low, you know, subsidized and low-income house. That's prime. Vacation rentals. They're offering vacation rentals, so they're off the market. I know.
Councilmember Whitburn.
That concern that you speak of is one of the reasons why the city of San Diego, what has it been now, a year and a half, but within the last couple of years passed an ordinance regulating short-term vacation rentals and requiring that the operators of short-term vacation rentals have a permit. The city has allotted a specific number of permits citywide, and also a different number to the Mission Beach area. And that needs to be enforced. We need to make sure that the number of short-term vacation rentals that are operating in the city matches the number of permits that have been issued, which actually the number of permits is less than the number of short-term vacation rentals that were known to be operating prior to the ordinance's passage. So if successful, the ordinance should have the effect of reducing the number of short-term vacation rentals operating in the city. But we need to make sure that the number of short-term vacation rentals that are operating with permits.
Okay, we're not going to do back and forth with the panel. Thank you for your question, Wendy. I'd like to respond to some of the questions that are coming in from the other folks as well. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Cusack.
So we made a law and then nobody is enforcing it. And if we reassign the 73.15 officers assigned to harass the homeless, then we could get some people enforcing it. An idea I had was these vacation rentals can only rent 6 months out of the year. And why not have the government master lease these facilities the remainder of the year in order to house our homeless individuals? We have 1,500 homeless seniors on the street and 1,324 disabled individuals for whom there are no shelter beds. And so these facilities a lot of times are ADA accommodating that the shelters are not. The government would be the landlord and responsible for any damage that happened during the stay, and there should be a preference of use over non-use. Thank you.
Was there anyone else on the panel who wanted to respond to that? Mr. Rose, and then we'll take a question from one of our online guests.
Sure. A previous city council member actually had a business where he had 70 units that he rented out. 70 units. Now, I understand if somebody makes the argument that, oh, this is the way I earn money for my children's college education. That maybe calls for 1 or 2 units, right? Not for 70 units. 70 units is 7 units off the market. And there's a reason why our housing stock has changed. We have allowed that to happen without really putting a brake on it. And I appreciate the fact that maybe you have this ordinance and whatnot, but it's not enforced. And I have seen cities that have enforced, and it calls for far more effort than what we do here. So yeah, there are a whole lot of things that need to be addressed, and I really appreciate that question.
All right, so we have a question from Katrina McShane, who's online with us. And the question is, can we please ask the panel to discuss the difference between affordable housing and low income housing? And then the follow on to that is it true that affordable housing is a relative term in relation to median or average rent in the location? So who would like to respond first? All right, Mr. Reed.
HUD defines housing as affordable if it consumes a third or less of your gross income. That's sort of the HUD standard. If you're paying more than that, you are considered overburdened. And people will use the term affordable housing, like they're frequently referring to is some sort of housing that's either financed or set up with a deed, some sort of deed restriction that mandates that the rent or the cost of that housing be artificially held down relative to the income of the person who is likely going to live there. Now, the income of the person who lives there is generally structured via the number of people who live in that household. There's a little bit of a kind of a complicated table that comes out for every single jurisdiction that says, if you have a 2 or 3 bedroom unit, what is the affordable rent that would fit for that unit? So folks will use the term affordable housing or low income housing sort of interchangeably, but in most sort of industry circles, when we're talking about affordable housing, we are talking about housing that has some sort of restriction on it that mandates that it be affordable for a household of a certain size at a certain income level.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to respond? Okay, Councilmember Whitburn.
I would, that's exactly correct. And I would simply add that there is quite a range of income restricted affordable housing levels. They're based on the area median income. And in San Diego, the area median income these days is somewhere in the ballpark of, I mean, we'll just use the roughly $100,000. So oftentimes you'll have income restricted affordable housing that is geared toward people at 30% of the area median income, or people who can afford a unit that is affordable to someone who makes $30,000 a year. But oftentimes you also have income restricted affordable housing that's affordable to somebody who makes 80% AMI or around $80,000 a year. Well, there's a big difference in the affordability, whether it's geared towards someone at 30% AMI or 80% AMI. We need all of it. I believe that to really help solve our homelessness crisis, we need to be gearing as much of our affordable housing to the most deeply affordable levels, that 30%, 25% of AMI, so that we can actually get people indoors.
Right, thank you. So I just received a question. There were a couple of kind of buzzwords related to housing that haven't come up in tonight's discussion. And those are tenants' rights, rent control, and just cause evictions. And I was wondering if anyone is willing to discuss how these particular issues are having an impact on our housing climate in San Diego.
So this is like the relay in law, and when I get my clients move from homelessness into a rental situation, they leave homelessness help or tenant help. And there's a whole nother set of rules. So we have people funneling into homelessness daily through eviction court. One of the ways we can stop this is to give these individuals who we know are financially challenged free counsel. That's not currently the case. And so you get a lot of lopsided court proceedings, and that usually doesn't favor the tenant a lot of times. So there does need to be, because we have so many seniors who are exiting into homelessness because of a small raise in rent. There does need to be protections in place for places where we know large numbers of individuals in fixed incomes are living. And that's not been adequately addressed to stop the flow.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to those issues? Mr. Rose, if that's the mic to him, please.
You know, I've been a long time supporter of tenants' rights. I mean, when I was in student government at Illinois State University back in the early 1980s, we had a tenants union, okay, for students, and it has its place. I need to say that there are two sets of rules here. There are rules for the housed, and then there are no rules for those who are not housed, or for people who are escaping homelessness, okay? Good housing first policy calls for inclusion. Unfortunately, too many service providers locally think that that means that the case managers in that location control those meetings, okay? And I always think, and I know it's fiction, but I always think in terms of the grapes of wrath. You know, it's more than just fiction. It is homework. So think about that camp where people, where the women come together and they formed a union of sorts to run the camp. Good things come from that. They really, really do. Can they go wrong? Can they go off the tracks? Yeah, they can. But good housing first calls for helping to guide that. It doesn't call for controlling it. You know, complete stop to it. And that's what I've been seeing happen. And so I believe in tenants' rights. I wish that somebody would finally pass the protections for homeless and formerly homeless people.
Just quickly, two of the groups who we struggle the most to keep housed, who turn to us as they're losing their housing, are seniors on fixed incomes and single income families, often single parent families. And the reason that they're most often losing their housing is because the unit they are renting is being taken away from them. And it's being redeveloped and it's no longer available. And they live in a unit that is just below market and not able to pay actual market rent. And so I'm not sure what the right policies are to prevent that from happening, but smart people at this club and in this room can come up with those. But just to name that is the cause of homelessness for far too many people, simply not being able to renew their lease.
I agree wholeheartedly with Greg, and one of the things that we have seen is that the state of California limits rent increases for most rental properties. But some landlords, not all, but some try to get around that by saying that they're going to do a remodel of the units. And to do the remodel, they, tell the tenants that they have to leave, they evict the tenants, then they remodel the unit, and then jack up the rental price tremendously. And essentially, they use that quote unquote remodel as a mechanism to increase the rent beyond the limits that the state has imposed. So the city of San Diego just recently passed a tenant protection ordinance specifically to address some of these concerns. And I was a strong supporter of it. I voted for it. One of the things that it does, for instance, is it increases the amount of money that a landlord has to provide a tenant so that that tenant can find another place to rent while it's being, while the original unit is being remodeled, or while that individual finds another unit. So these issues are a significant cause of homelessness, and the tenant protection ordinance that the city has is designed to help to mitigate that.
All right, thank you. We're gonna have one last question, and this is from Dr. Tiffany Boyd Hodgson. And the question is, how do we incentivize the creation of more affordable housing? And how do we hold people in office accountable to enable the moderate RHNA numbers to be met and not the low income? I'm not sure what that acronym means, RHNA.
Yeah, I think she's talking about.
Regional Housing Needs Assessment.
Yeah. The RHNA numbers are essentially the allocation of how much affordable housing a given jurisdiction is supposed to be building, given the projections of how much growth an area is going to have. When I think about incentivizing the creation of enough affordable housing, what I frequently will say is there's pretty much three solutions. So most of the things that we talk about kind of fits into one of three buckets. You're either talking about a subsidy. So that's either a subsidy provided to either the resident or the builder. So essentially that's public money coming into the system that's incentivizing the production of that housing. You can deal with density. So you can create policies that incentivize and allow developers to put 4 units where they could have put 2, 6 units where they could have put 3. Though that all comes with some challenges. And the third option essentially is some sort of regulation. I have a background in law, so I'd say some sort of regulatory taking. That's what rent control is, or some sort of mechanism where you are holding down how much a property owner can expect for their property. Those are essentially the 3 avenues, the 3 sets of tools that most public policies are built around. As you can probably guess, none of those 3 are politically easy. They're all incredibly hard and require, unfortunately, telling voters they either have to raise taxes, they have to allow more housing in their neighborhood, or the property that they're thinking about owning will probably be worth less because they can't charge as much for the rent. So those are unpopular options. So I think for elected officials, it's very hard to kind of walk that line. And so I think it's important as we as voters to sort of understand both how tough that is, what we're asking our fellow voters to either consider or to go along with.
All right, Councilmember Whitburn, unless there's anyone after you, you will be the last response for this evening.
All right, and I'll keep it short. I know we're wrapping up. I just wanted to dovetail on that the city of San Diego is very pro-housing, and we have really prioritized the incentivization of affordable housing, not only through the density bonuses, but through some other mechanisms as well. Mayor Gloria recently implemented a policy where 100% affordable projects need to go through the permit process, and the city staff needs to process those permits within 30 days. Time is money in development, and so if permits can be processed within a month, that saves money and that helps to make those more affordable. The city has really incentivized the creation of accessory dwelling units, granny flats as they're known, which oftentimes can be more affordable. Georgette Gomez, when she was the council president, she spearheaded an effort to increase so when developers are building a market rate housing project, they're required to include a certain percentage of affordable units. But they can also, instead of creating the units, pay what's called an in lieu fee, money instead. She worked with coalitions and the city council to increase the in lieu fee. And that helps to incentivize developers, instead of paying the in lieu fee, to actually create the affordable units on site, which is good because we want those market rate projects to actually also have the affordable units on site. So there's a lot that is going on in this space, and the city of San Diego has been a leader in finding ways to get more affordable housing developed.
All right, in an effort to be equitable, I'm going to allow Mr. Rose to respond, and then we really do have to close the floor. We've reached our time threshold this evening.
Understandable. And I just have to say, it's hard to sit here and hear what for me comes across as fluffy good news when it doesn't equate with the reality that I experience. Okay. But in regards to the original question, there needs to be an education campaign to educate people about what are we talking about, because so many of you don't know what we're talking about. You don't know the terminology, you don't know the background behind it. Are we talking about the same thing? We need to start getting on the same page. And that's actually the original impetus behind my running for city council. It's time to educate people. What are we talking about? Let's use the same terminology. Let's talk about the same things. The second thing I want to say is, you know what? My studio apartment that I told you about with the black mold, when I moved in, it was supposed to be $937 a month. I have Section 8, okay? And so I didn't have to pay for that personally. You know what the rate is now, 6 years later? The rent is $2,197, approved by the Housing Commission. Approved by the Housing Commission. And on top of that, they've now increased the density for these apartments so that instead of it being one person per studio apartment, it's now 2. Okay, now tell me, how is that disconnected from what I just heard? That's largely disconnected. I'm tired of it.
All right, I'd like to thank all of our panelists this evening. We've had a rich conversation that barely grazed the surface of this really significant issue impacting our region. We appreciate everyone that took the time to come out this evening and respond to tough questions. And we look forward to seeing you again in different venues. Thank you.
Thank you.
While you're at it, let's keep it going for Samantha Jenkins, who did a fabulous job moderating today. Thank you, everyone. I also want to thank those of you who did send in questions, because we did ask for folks to submit questions all last week, and we appreciate those questions as well. We do have some business to do. We have the rest of our meeting. So I'm going to call now for unfinished business. Anyone have an unfinished business to? Any new business tonight? All right, we're going to move on to our officer reports. Let me see who's on the Zoom. There's Angela. Let's start with Angela, because I know that Angela does have an officer's report regarding the mailers that went out that were disparaging against Monica Montgomery's staff. And Angela did write a wonderful piece. We put it out as a statement, a joint statement with BAR, and then we turned it into a resolution, all authored by Angela DeJoseph. So go ahead, Angela.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I'm glad to know that everybody is dry and safe. We did quite some activity this past month, and I'm very proud of the Democratic Women's Club partnering with Black and African Women Rise to put out that letter, basically talking about, you know, those mailers that went out against Monica Montgomery Stepp, who was this club's, you know, nominee and endorsed candidate, and also the endorsed candidate of the Democratic Party of San Diego. However, the mailers that were sent out by the police union and the DA's union were false. And they were, La Prensa did a wonderful expose on that. And on top of that, I was able to get the Union Tribune to do a story on it. We did put out the letter jointly, and then that was on August the 1st, and August the 4th is when the Union Tribune did the story. Then we did go before the resolutions committee, and we put forth a resolution so that any Democrat that's running for an office would have to denounce that type of mailer and that type of campaigning. And I think it's really important that as a club, that we do stand for certain types of behavior and character. And so I don't know if you can bring the resolution up on the screen, but the resolution is available for everybody to read it. And on August 29th at the county Democratic meeting, we will be voting on this. It came out of we did get it out of the resolutions committee, and now it goes to the full body. And so it's really important for everyone to show up on the 29th to the county meeting so that you can be heard. And we want to
read it on the back. It's on the back of the agenda tonight, Angela. So everyone should have it.
Good. Oh, good. Thank you. Very good. I was in a workshop, but I'm glad to hear that. But I want to just make sure that everybody knows that on the 29th to show up, and that the Democratic Women's Club really showed leadership in standing up on this issue. So that's my report.
Thank you, Angela. And you showed great leadership by offering such a wonderful piece. So thank you very much for taking the initiative and doing that. And also, Ellis Pipkin-Allen with her help on that. Okay. So that is Angela's report. Let's go down. Ellis Pipkin-Allen, do you have a report tonight? I'm going to say she does not. Beatrice gave me her report, but she is on the call. I don't know that she wants to be on. Let me just read you her. So the treasurer's report, we have $3,810.53. Oh, go ahead, Beatrice. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. You said it so much better than I could have said it.
So it's $3,810.53 in our account. So thank you for taking care of our money. Appreciate you.
Right. I've just been a little bit absent for the last 7 weeks, but I'll be getting back into my role as treasurer. So you'll see more of me again. So I apologize for my absence.
We appreciate it.
And great job with the panel, and also for standing up for Monica Montgomery and the disinformation. It's fantastic that the club's doing this. I'm proud to be a member of the club.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
Hang on, Susan.
Beatrice, I'm still there. It's a club offered you our centerpiece. I will pass it with your mother. We know how hard this time is going. Well, you Beatrice.
All right, continuing on with officer report. Do you have anything? Oh, she's speaking over there. Yvonne? Nothing to report? Hannah? Nothing to report. Patricia?
Oh, we have one new member attending tonight, Sue Bell. And others who are interested, so thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so for my report, I'm just going to talk briefly about the club summit that's coming up, We're having a club summit where you can go and learn. Hopefully, we're all going to go and learn how to engage and win in 2024. The summit is coming up this weekend on Saturday, the 26th. It's going to be at City College. It's free. You have to register. So check your email because we have all the information in the email from the club. If you need more, actually, I'll send it out again. So when Hannah sends out the minutes tomorrow, she'll include the link to register for the club summit. So we'd love to see you there. We're gonna have a table. If anybody wants to come volunteer to work at the table, that would be great too. Otherwise, come and enjoy and learn because I think it's our first time doing it.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a brand new experience and hopefully a wonderful experience. All right, did I hit all the officers? I think so. All right, announcements. What do we got?
I'm just gonna sit down. Hopefully everyone can hear me online. But I just wanted to say hi, everyone. My name is Danny. I'm the president of the Downtown Democratic Club. And if you want to take a look at the city attorney race, we're actually going to be holding a forum for the city attorney candidates. Both Brian and Heather will be in attendance. So if you guys want to know a little bit more about the candidates there and who we're going to be voting for, the party I believe has already decided, but our clubs, some of them still have not. So if you guys want to join us, we're going to be meeting online on the 27th, this upcoming Sunday at 3 o'clock. Wonderful.
Other announcements? All right, seeing no other announcements, we have reached the end of our agenda and I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, Kathy, it's Michelle. I have not been able to raise my hand. I just wanted to thank the club on behalf of Monica Montgomery Stepp and to tell you that she's really appreciative. She's trying to take a little bit of a break, but we will be back in action. We can use whatever help people because we have a runoff on November 7th. So we will be back in action. Anybody that's able to help with precinct walking, phone banking, meet and greets, or fundraisers, please contact John and Susan are very involved. Contact me or contact the campaign. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. We are fired up and ready to go. We will be back in action for Monica. All right, Angela?
Yes, I had a quick announcement. The Women of Color Roar, we are launching our first academy. It's a leadership academy for high school students, and it's September 23rd. And we are looking for students, if you know any that would like to register. Also, we'd like some volunteers who can help us out that day. We're expecting to have about 60 students there. It's a life skills half-day workshop where they'll learn about leadership, financial literacy, and also how to get a job, an internship, and get them on their way. So I put my email in the chat if anybody is interested in volunteering, or if you can suggest any teenagers you think that might be helped by this workshop.
Great work as always, Angela. All right, anybody else? Last call? All right, we'll see everyone next month or at the club summit this Saturday. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
I couldn't hear you.